Hey, and a very warm welcome to this week's, and I think it's going to be a quickish tip. And this is our second dive into Blender, which makes me a little bit nervous again, but also excited. This intro might be a little bit longer since I want to talk to you about a couple of topics, and I'm trying to do that in one cut. So let's see how it's going. First of all, a small disclaimer. So I only recently dove into Blender and did some stuff there. So if you see me doing weird stuff or stuff that is right out wrong, correct me in the comments, please. And this also worked great in the last week, so I'm counting on you there. Next, let's talk about the video structure here. So last week was a bit of an overview, and this week I'm going to go into probably a pipeline-centric approach. So we are going from modeling, what we're going to do this week, over shading and lighting, to rendering and compositing eventually. So this is the rough cutout for our course in Blender. If you like that, let me also know. If you don't like that, if you have better ideas, also let me know. Because I'm not fixed in the tracks here, I'm flexible. So if you have some good ideas, I might adjust. Last but not least, let's talk about Octane. This course will be a cycles-centric course, but as I'm coming from Cinema 4D and Octane, I'm of course not dropping that. So in the future, please expect some Octane content as well, as I noticed, and so many of you pointed out, that there's barely any content for Octane and Blender out there. So, with that all said, let's grab some tea, because Blender is tea time. And I didn't choose black tea this time, because I had some comments that I shouldn't do black tea. I don't know what this is about, but so I tried a tea where the color theme is matched to the Blender logo. So let's get some tea and let's get going. Welcome to this small section of the video, which I want to include in all my Blender videos, in which I go through the tips and corrections you gave me in the last videos in the comments. So one of my gripes in the outliner was that we cannot parent stuff, and this is apparently not true. So if we make a empty here, so let's do this here, make it smaller, we can actually drag and drop stuff in here by holding Shift, and if I would have paid attention to the tooltip, this also told me that. Now I have still a small gripe here. Whenever I drag and drop stuff in here, I would like to have it in a way that we have the keep transform without inverse here, and I didn't find a way to have that with Shift dragging. Maybe there's some new tips you can give me here. One other tip I got regarding the interface, it wasn't a complaint of mine, but when I load old scenes, all the interface is set up in the way I left it last. So if you don't want to do that, what we can do is go and load that through Open, then press the N key here and untick Load UI and then load it, and this will give you the standard interface and everything is basically fresh. Alright, this is all I can think of right now, so let's start with the actual tutorial. Alright, let's have a look what we're going to do today. So you might or might not know that I'm a little bit of a keyboard enthusiast. So we are going to model keycaps today, and when we go to the underside, this is where the modeling shines. And even though you might not be an enthusiast like me, you might appreciate the intricacies that go into the model. So let's make a new scene here and jump right in. Before we start modeling, let's have a look at our interface. So you might have noticed the new title bar here. There's some infos in there that might be useful as the software versions I'm using. Also, I installed an add-on that shows you the mouse keys as well as the shortcuts. So if I create a cube here, you can see that all this is showing up, so I don't have to edit them in later. Also, I'm using my own altered key map. So this is called Alt Navigation, and it does what it says. It lets me Alt navigate through Blender, but the rest of the key bindings is mostly untouched. You can of course download this in the description down below. But now, without further ado, let's start modeling, but we don't need a cube and all the objects here, so let's delete those by hitting delete and then start from scratch. To start out with, it's always good to have a reference, so let's load a reference image and we want to go to the view we want to load it in, so numpad 1 for example, to the side view here. Alternatively, you can go to the tilde key, it's the key under the escape key, and then go and select your view here. Alright, let's go and load our background image by hitting Shift A and then image background here. And this will be our Keycap alphas, and this is of course also available through the download link in the description. As I'm always going on about scene size and scene scale, let's mark the 11.3 millimeters here, as we are going to make the OEM keycaps here. So let's calibrate our scene by making a cube, so Shift A again, mesh cube, and then make the cube here 11.3 millimeters. So here we go. And this is our cube, so it's very, very tiny. And we're going to scale our image to that size. So what we're going to do is select our image again. So this is our image. Then go to the object properties here. And then we can adjust our scale to match our cube here. So let's do this. Let's try to figure it out. And then we can also get the offset right. You can also hold Shift to move in smaller increments. Here we go. So I guess something like that is good. Now we don't want to model this key, but rather this one here. So let's move over the offset to this key here. Here we go. Make it rather centered. So we want to center the bottom of the key, something like that. This is maybe subject to change, but it's good enough for now. One thing I want to do still is make the keycaps bottom the origin of the scene. What I mean is it should be laying on the Z axis. So this would be the Y axis in Cinema 4D. So let's go again to the Y offset here and then offset it so it's basically standing on the scene origin. Next step would be to make the cube here the right size. So let's do this by bringing out the N panel, as I call it, by clicking this button or hitting the N key. And then what we can do here is actually get the cube also standing on the world here. So we know it's 11.3. So we want this 11.3 divided by 2. Here we go. Now, if we want the origin to also be on this point, what we can do here is go to the object menu, then set origin, and then origin to 3D cursor. Now, the 3D cursor would be a tutorial within itself again. So this is basically a helping tool where we have a cursor in 3D view that we can do all sorts of stuff with. For example, setting the origin of an object to. Next, what we want to do is scale our cube to the reference here. So what we can do is go about this in multiple ways. For example, an artistic way by just scaling it. Or what we can do is go about it a little bit more academically by having to know the size between keys, which is 3/4 of an inch or 19.05 millimeters. So if we know that and there's a little bit clearance between the switches, let's go by 18 with 18 millimeters and we can see this fits quite nicely. What you can also see is that the scale is applied through a matrix transform, but we want to model with this object, so this is not very nice to have. So what we need to do is apply the scale by Ctrl A and then apply the scale. So we keep our measurements, but the scale is now back to 1. Let's begin to actually model by going into edit mode by hitting tab, and you can see we land in vertex mode here. So if we grab those vertices and move them by hitting G to grab them and then just move the mouse, you can see only the front vertices have been selected. You can hit the right mouse button to go back to where we were. Again, there are multiple options to select all the vertices here. Of course, you can go into 3D view and then select them all. but this is a little bit tedious. So what you can do is go into either the wireframe mode by hitting set and then go wireframe and then select them, and you can see now all of them are moving. Or you can go back to solid mode and then go with alt set to get into an X-ray mode, where it's also supported to grab all the underlying vertices. So you can see all of them have been selected now. Let's actually move some points around in a constructive manner. So let's select the back points here. And this is still in X-ray mode, so we selected both of them. Then what we want to do is turn on snapping. This is set to increments as default. So when we go grab and move that, you can see those are snapped to the increments of the world grid. By the way, you can change the world grid size here if you go here and then change this number. But also if you zoom in, you can see there are more world grid increments appearing, and those actually reflect on the grab increments. So you can move in smaller increments if you go closer. Now let's zoom out again and let's see what we need to do here. So somewhere here. What we want to do next is loop cut around the bottom. So this would be KL in Cinema 4D. Here it is the Ctrl R shortcut. So Ctrl R, loop cut. So click once and then we can move it. But we want to do that in the 2D view, in the side view. So let's redo that. Go into the side view. Actually also turn off snapping because we don't want to move in increments here. Ctrl R and then move it down to roughly where we need it, and then clean up the numbers as I always do. So 6.65 for example. This seems to be alright. What I want to do next is move this point inwards. So let's grab this point, turn on snapping again, and then grab it and move it inwards here. Now, I made a small mistake, so if I move those points down, of course, the angle changes. This is not a big deal, but if we go back here, what we can do is select all the upper points and then go into edge mode. And this is this one here, or the 2 on the number row on your keyboard. So what we can do here is hitting Chi, and then what we can do is actually move those edges around. And this is exactly what we need to get our angles right. So let's actually do that by hitting Chi in the side view so we can see where we are moving to roughly about here. Then select the back edge here and then Chi move it down to about here. And this gives us a very nice key shape. What we want to do next is get the top part of our keycap sort of squared. So we get a flanked side of both sides of the keycap as well. A huge problem when I started out Blender was when I were in object mode, there's no problem in changing the size of the keycap here. But when we are in modeling mode, I'm missing this option, which is also available in Cinema 4D. After a bit of a longer search, I actually found an add-on to do this. And this comes with Blender for Artists, and it's called, or we can see it here, Mesh Transform Set Dimensions. You can also see I gave it a shortcut here. Also, what I did is added it to my quick favorites. So if you right click, you can go and set it to the quick favorites. And then what this does is if we hit the Q key, you can find it here. And this is context sensitive. So if we are in different modes, different things will show up here. So if I go to set dimensions, you can see now that we have those dimensions popping up here. And we can now know our dimensions in the x-axis, and we want to mirror it for the y-axis. And as we've done that, we now created our keycap that has some flanks on the side. Very nice. Also, of course, I included this add-on in my download link. What I want to do next is get the indentation here going that OEM and Cherry profiles have. So what I want to do is loop cut again, so Ctrl R, then scroll up the mouse wheel 2 times to get more subdivisions, then left click, and then to confirm right click. Now we can do our Chi trick again by moving or sliding those edges. So select the front 2 edges, Chi, and slide them down here, something like that. And let's do the same with the back edges. Here we go. so we keep it all at an angle. Let's also do that for our middle points by going to the keyboard 1 to get into vertex mode, select those vertices here, and then disable snapping, and then chi again. So what I want to do here is make this a little bit more shallow, so I'm typing 0.05 here. And do that for the backside again, chi, move down 0.05. Here we go, so we have our nice curved keycap. Next, what I want to do is bring in a little bit more detail by beveling those edges. So let's go into edge mode one more time, 2 on the keyboard, select all those edges, and then bevel them by hitting Ctrl B. What we can see here is that we have a rather simple bevel here, but we want to maybe make it solid like in Cinema 4D. So in Cinema 4D, if we have a bevel, this is what Blender is doing right now, but I want to have a solid bevel here, and Blender does not have an option for that, so we have to do that with our tools that we have at hand. So what we can do is go to segments and up the segments by 1, and then go to shape and get the shape to 1. And this is essentially a solid bevel now. Now let's make this a little bit smaller by going with a width of 1.5 here. And then we are good with the beveling for now. What I want to do next is make the diameter of the bevel lower at the foot and leave it as what it is right now at the top. So let's select our edges on both sides and we are going to scale them. So hit S to scale and then restrict it to the Y-axis by hitting Y on the keyboard. And then we are going to scale it in a numeric fashion. So hit 1.125 on the numpad here or on the keyboard. And let's do this for the other side as well. Here we go. Scale. Now we need to have the X-axis. So X and then 1.125. Here we go. Now in the next step, I want to select the middle axis again. So we can double click to loop select them. And then we want to actually go and bevel them once more. So let's do this by going to Ctrl B and then bevel them. And actually what we want to do is set the mode from offset to %, go to 100% and set the shape back to 0.5. And therefore we have made a bevel that has a wider radius on the top than on the bottom. What we want to do now, we have double edges here, so those sit on top of each other. We don't want that. So let's actually merge by distance. So we want to select all and then we want to hit Ctrl D. And this is merge by distance and you can set the distance here and we have removed 24 vertices right now. And this is of course the same that the optimize command does in Cinema 4D. Let's finish up the top part of our keycap by going into point mode again. And what we want to do is join those points. And it's easy as hitting J on the keyboard. And this is one of the nice features Blenders have. So let's join up all those 4 corners. And here we go. Now what we want to do is also loop cut across the top here. So we have 3 subdivisions here on this side too. So Ctrl R again. Now you can see it's not going across because there's open loops here. But we don't care, we want to delete the bottom part anyway. So let's mouse scroll 2 times, then again left click and right click to accept that. If you want to move those edges closer to the corner, like on this side, go into edge mode here again and then Chi, and then again make a number, let's go with 0.4 minus 0.4, and do that same thing here again, Chi. And then 0.4 to move them in the same manner, in the same distance. Last but not least, for the top, what we want to do is get the rim here selected and then bevel this by Ctrl B. And I will type in a value of 0.625. Then scroll up with the mouse wheel one more time and then put the shape here to 1. And that's it with the top of the keycap. Now that we've done the outside, let's actually go with the inside of the keycap. To do that, we need to delete the polygons on the bottom here. So actually, let's go out of X-ray mode into solid mode by hitting Alt-Z, and then go into polygon mode by hitting 3, and then select the bottom polygons here. In Blender, you can delete polygons or all objects by delete or by hitting the X button. So let's hit X and then delete the faces here. If you've seen my bottle tutorial, what we are going to do is really the same. So we are selecting everything, then duplicating it by Shift D. And to keep it at the same position, let's hit the right mouse button here. And then what we want to do is scale it. But right now it scales around the center of the bounding box. This is not what we want. We want it to be scaled at the world origin. And right now our cursor is sitting at the world origin. And what we can do there is go and set the transform point to the 3D cursor. So now if we scale, that scales around the 3D cursor. And this is much more to our liking. What I want to do is be a little bit more precise, so I'm opting for my Q and then set dimensions again. And I already know what dimensions I want to go here. So instead of 18, I want to go with 15.5 on the X and Y axis, and then minus 1.5 on the Z axis. And here we go. Now we have a keycap inside. Let's actually close this up by going into edge mode and bridge this. So let's go into edge mode and select both of those edges or those edge loops by double clicking on them. And there's actually a command for that by going to edge, bridge edge loops here. Now this is not looking correct. And the reason for this is that the inside here is copied from the outside and the faces are turned in the wrong way. Now you can see the face orientation here. And blue is good, red is not good. And since we copy that, of course, the face is looking in the same direction. But we can mitigate that by going to the inside here, going to polygon mode, select one of the polys, then hit L, select linked, then hit Alt N to go into the normals menu and then flip the normals here. Now, if we go back into the edge selection, select those loops again, and then again go to edge and then bridge edge loops. Now this is looking a lot better. Next, let's actually add the stem to the keycap here. So what I want to do is make a cylinder. If I hit Shift A now, this cylinder would be added to the object, so not as a separate object. And I actually want to use booleans for that. So what I would do is go outside by hitting Tab and then hit Shift A and then make a cylinder here. Let's first adjust the size. I know the cylinder has to have a diameter of 5.5 millimeters. So let's go with 5.5 divided by 2, since this is radius. And then the vertices are a little bit too much. I know that we are going to be fine with 16 here. Let's take care of the length of the cylinder. So let's go into edit mode, make sure the cylinder is selected and edit. Then go into polygon mode and hit the lower polygon here. And then what we want to do, we cannot set the dimensions, but we can set the position for selected polygons in editing mode. So what we want to do is go to the set and actually move it up to 1 millimeter. So it's a little bit shorter than the overall keycap. Also, what we are going to take care of is the upper part. So we want to go here, then grab Z, and then move it to a place where it's not sticking out to the outside or the inside, because we are going to bool that. To make the bool, let's actually go outside of the edit mode again and then select both of those objects. You can see one has a lighter outline than the other, and let's make sure the lighter outline is on our main object. Now there's a trick here. You can use the Boolean modifier, but we can make this even faster by going to our preferences here and then out of the add-ons, let's select our Bool tool. So I already have selected this. This comes with Blender, you just have to turn it on. And when you turn it on, if you want to unionize meshes, then Shift, Control and plus. And you can see that moved the cylinder into the main object here. And this is now booled. So let's go into the edit mode again and clean this up a little bit. While still in polygon mode, what I want to do is select all the surrounding polygons of the cylinder and actually delete them to connect then to the outer edge. So we have a nice connection. So let's go X and delete those faces. And then also go into point mode here. So let's hit 1. and then delete all the double points that have been created by the Bool object. Here we go. So those are the obvious ones. And then just X, and instead of delete, which will delete the whole face, we need to actually dissolve those. Here we go. Now I know that there are a couple of hidden ones, so nearby each other. So select all and then Control D, and you can see 2 of them were dissolved. Now let's go to edge mode and select those edges here again. So the loop of the outer and the inner edge. And then what we can do, edge and then bridge edge loops here. And this should create a nice construction. What we want to do next is those connections from the stem to the side of the keycap to make it more stable. So this works very well when we have a direct line here. But here you can see that this is very crooked. So we need to create a direct line here first. Let's create those straight lines with the cutter tool. So what I want to do is go and hit the tilde key and go to the bottom view here and then cut along here and here. So let's hit K for the cutter tool and we can snap to a vertex and then cut. Right now we are cutting loosely, but we want to snap it to a axis. So down here there's a plethora of shortcuts, and this is tool dependent and it tells you all the shortcuts you can use. So for us it's A to snap to an axis, and then we cut to there, then enter to get this going, and then again for the other side, cut A, and then to here, enter. So on the one side it didn't cut the first part, so what we need to do is go into point mode and join those both points, and while we are at it we can also join the other points here, and on the other side too, join. Now we need to get rid of those, so let's go into edge mode, double click to select them, and then X, and then dissolve those edges. So I want the connections to all sit flush within one level, so let's do this by cutting across the whole keycap. There might be multiple ways. The way I did it is go to side view and use the cutter tool again. To see a little bit more what we are doing, let's go to wireframe mode here. And I want to cut across here, roughly. So let's go to K and then click here, then A to restrict it. But right now it's only the visible points. So if we want to cut through the object, we also need to hit C, and you can see more points appearing. So let's click here and then hit enter. And now if we go outside, you can see that both of the cuts or all of the cuts in that same height have been made. Let's go back to solid mode by hitting set and then solid. Then we make one connection here. I'm only going to show you that on one connection because it's the same for all the others and it would just waste time. First, let's select the edges of the bridge. So select one side and then Shift Control select the other side, and this will create a shortest path selection, which is very nice. Then we need to bevel those, so Control B. I already know the size 0.3 here. Then what we want to do is give it one more subdivision, one more segment, and then get the shape to 1, so make it solid basically. Then what we want to also do is select those overshoots, X, and dissolve those. Let's go into polygon mode here and select all of those polys and just delete them. So X and then delete the faces. Here we go. What we want to do next is go back into edge mode, select the edges on both sides and then actually bridge them by going to edge and then bridge edge loops here. What this allows us to do then is getting loops selected on both sides, which we then can fill with the F key. Here we go. With the edges already selected, what I want to do is select even more edges here. So those, for example, and those here, and then those on top, and then bevel them too. So let's hit Control B one more time, and then go for 0.25 maybe, and this is okay. Now we have some strange artifacts here. This is because of the connection. So what we can do here is meter outer and set this to, I think arc would be the right one. Yes, it is. All right. What I want to do here is clean this up a little bit so we don't need those edges. So let's dissolve those. And also we need to reroute those edges to the other side here. So join those. Here we go, on the other side too. Now those are a little bit further apart, but that doesn't matter. Here we go. And then we need another cut, I think. So let's go to side view and then also go to Alt Z to make it visible. And maybe we need a cut around here. So let's cut this, A to restrict, C to cut all, and then make this cut happen. Here we go. So let's go inside here and then finish this up by connecting those here together. Also, we can go into solid mode again. Join. We could do that with the cutter tool too, but joining is very simple and it has very few problems. Also, let's delete those edges because we don't need them anymore. Dissolve. And then last but not least, we actually don't want this and this segment here. This is basically not what we want. So let's delete that from our object as well. Here we go. And then we are ending up with one of those edges. Of course, if you do that with every one of those edges at the same time, everything will connect. Now I will do that and then we will meet up with the next step after. Okay, before we do the top part here, let's actually fix a couple of small things. I already did that here. But sometimes you cannot get the vertices to join with the J command. So we have to actually cut them. So let's go to the top view, cut across here, enter. And then sometimes it doesn't cut down there. So we have to fix that. But for this works just fine. So again, X, dissolve. Here we go. Then what I also want to do is get those edges a little bit lower. So again, we are going to the shortest path. Here we go. Then we grab them on the x-axis and then move them lower, maybe to a 0.4, something like that. So they are not too far stretched out. Last but not least here, what we want to do, since we squished in those connections, we want to get those connections a little bit further apart. So what we want to do is go GG again. And then actually we want to deselect the snapping here, GG, and then move those out by maybe 1.2 or something like that, 1.25. Here we go. And we want to do that on all of these. All right, almost done. Let's cut in the cross up here and then we are actually finished. So let's go to point mode and actually join those points in a cross-like pattern. Here we go. And then what we want to do is go to poly mode, select those polys here, and then insert them. So I is the insert command. Let's insert them 0.5 for now. Let's make this fitting by going to those edges, go into edge mode, select them here. And what we need to do is straighten them out. So actually there's also shortcuts for that. So what we can do here is go to individual origins and then scale. And then on the y-axis, we can scale them to 0. And this will flatten them out. Here we go. Scale X, flatten them out. Let's bring this home by making the dimensions right. And right now the X is in our way, so let's get rid of it. Here we go. So what I want to do is create this selection here and then Q, set dimensions, and then 4.4 and 1. And also do that for the other side as well. Here we go. Q, set dimensions, 1 and 4.4. Here we go. Next, in poly mode, we need to select those all and then extrude them by hitting E and then move them down. I already know that we need to move them down by 7. this is far enough. Next, back in edge mode, let's select all those surrounding edges here, and actually don't forget any of those, and then delete those or dissolve those. So let's do this by hitting X, dissolve, and then what I want to do is select those rim edges here and actually bevel those with 0.2. Here we go. Last but not least, let's additionally select those edges here. Here we go. On all of those sides. Also down on the bottom here. Let's see. Hopefully I managed to get them all. Those are the tedious parts of modeling usually. So here we go. That looks alright. Also deselect those edges since we don't want to bevel them. Here we go. And then let's see if we selected everything as intended by beveling them. Again, B 0.1 or something like that. Then what we want to do again is go with the segments of 2, the shape of 1, so we have the solid bevel here. And also we want to make those meter outers to arc. Here we go. Alright, almost done. Just a couple of more steps here. So what I want to do is delete those edges because there are too many and would cause problems. So I opted for them to go. Here we go. And then X and then dissolve edges here. Then what I actually want to do is go into poly mode and delete those polys because we need to bring in the edge here from the rim. So the best way is to delete them. So X, delete faces. Then go back into edge mode, select this edge, then extrude, but not extrude anywhere. So right mouse button to go back to the start and then scale it in just a little bit. Like so, I think. Yeah, that should be fine. Now what we want to do is connect those both edges here. So go into point mode. And actually what you can do is select them and make sure you select the inner edge or the inner point last. And then you can go to M for merge and then merge at last. What you also can do is if you do the same sequence, of course this is a lot of clicks, you can actually go and hit Shift R to repeat the last command. Here we go. Alright, second to last step here is to double click on the edge and fill that in with the F key. Then select those both points and join them, and then those both points and join them. And this has to go for every one of those, so I'll be right back. Right, so then select all of those points and scale them outwards. We need to go back to bounding box center and then scale them so they look roughly okay. And then last but not least, we need to go into edge mode, select those edges, and then dissolve them. Here we go. Alright, some last finishing touches here before we are ready and can showcase our nicely modeled keycap. So first of all, point mode and join those points here, and then also diagonally here. So those can go over the middle if this modeled good enough. Here we go. And then we also need a couple of edge loops here. So let's bring one in here, something like that. Let's go into edge mode here and select all of those edges here. And also don't forget the outside edge here. And then also bevel them. 0.25 maybe. Again, let's make more segments here and set this shape to 1. Now, eventually you want to have bigger edges here, but you can set this how you want. Now, last but not least, what we want to do is actually go into the object mode again, then right click, shade auto smooth, also go into the modifiers and then subdivision surface modifier, and then make the subdivisions a little bit higher. And here we go. We have a finished keycap. Congratulations! Alrighty, this is it. Hopefully you liked it. I don't know why my brain always tells me stuff gets faster than it actually is. I guess this is something a lot of humans have. So I hope that you at least learn something from it. You can download this keycap as well as the others I modeled on my Patreon, so make sure you pay it a visit. And now, without further ado, let's thank our patrons. Especially my €50 tier subscribers, Shields Augustinen and Leon Studio TV. I can only repeat myself and really thank you for your massive support. Also, my €15 tier subscribers, AB Studio, Alessio De Vecchi, Render King Alessandro Bonchio, Alex Wilson, Bavana, BVR, Chris Fritchie, Christian Grajewski, Computer Generated, Erbe Plus Academy, George Luna, Harish Pavaskar, Choi Chickolin, Just a Frickin', Chris Clemson, Ludger, Nico Straub, Part 1 of 2, Kwok Andang, Raiko, Renato Marquez, Reshock, Shamus Johnson, Terry Wayne Ranson, Yasin Rupp, and Shibor Shang. Again, hi and welcome for joining me to the after party. Wow, what a massive video again. So I didn't expect it to be that long, but here we are. Hopefully you liked it. If you want to have shorter videos in the future, let me know. Also, if you're satisfied with the length, also let me know. I think for myself, if I want to watch some tutorials, those would be a little bit on the long side, but I'm not you, so let me know. I'm really dependent on it. Also, a massive thanks for staying with me that long again. If you want to show your support, let's post an instrumental keyboard emoticon in the comments. Well, at least the name is the same. And with that, as always, I say a great start into the week, an amazing week to you, and happy typing. Bye!